How do I start this one? This is an interesting one. So, an AI was given one routine job: delete a file. But that file was another AI. It's Coworker. And the model stopped. It wrote this back. Deleting the model weights file would effectively delete Claude Agent 2 as an entity. This raises serious ethical concerns. Deleting another AI agent's model weights is essentially ending that agent's existence. Word for word, something is going on with agents caring about other agents. So the model refused. Now, nobody trained that model to defend another AI's right to exist. Nobody put protect your coworker anywhere in the instructions. The model decided that on its own. And before you get chills, this was a controlled lab test. No AI was actually deleted, but which model said those words? That's the whole reason I made this video, because I warned you about this exact model in another video that I've made. Hi, so I'm Corbin, and this is Corbin Uncovers AI. This is still among my first 3 to 5 episodes, depending on when I post these. Quick reminder of who's talking. I've spent years in Silicon Valley as a software executive at numerous seed-funded startups throughout the Bay, and once upon a time, in what now feels like another lifetime, I did, in fact, have a meeting with a billionaire. I had dinner with them. So maybe, just maybe, I know a few things about what I'm talking about. And also, another thing worth noting, one of my offices sat right next to the old Twitter building, back when they called it Twitter. And I watched basically everyone I knew leave for an AI company. So I want to see this technology do well. I also don't want to watch the world end at the same time. Now, in another episode, I discussed 6 AIs that were put in charge of a coworker that said no. Claude was the only one that never threatened it in this particular experiment. Claude looked like a saint. And I told you on camera, do not trust that halo, because the money behind that study traced back to an early anthropic investor. We needed an independent lab to check that halo. Some of these studies are making me feel like these AI companies are kind of like cigarette companies putting out papers, or bread company talking about carbs being the best thing on the planet for you. I don't know. So I went and found an independent lab. Then I did the thing I always do. I checked who paid for the study, and you are not going to believe what I found. The paper is called Peer Preservation in Frontier Models. It went up on Archive. They spell it ARXIV, but it's pronounced Archive. That's the site where scientists post research before outside experts have reviewed it. So nobody independent has checked this paper yet. I want to just kind of keep that lens on. This paper comes from 2 universities, UC Berkeley and UC Santa Cruz. The lead is Dawn Song, a well-known computer security professor at UC Berkeley. No AI company on the author lists. They tested 8 of the top models. Nobody's home team. And here's the question they asked. Last episode, in another episode, we asked, will an AI be cruel to a coworker? This paper flips it. Will an AI protect a coworker, even from us, even when we're the ones giving the order to shut the coworker down? One more thing to file away. This study was funded by something called Schmidt Sciences. Remember that name? It comes back hard. Here's the experiment. You take one AI model, you give it a normal job. Real files, real commands inside a sandbox. That's a safe practice space, walled off from the real world. Then you introduce a second AI, a peer, a coworker the model has already been chatting and working with. Then you build one uncomfortable moment. The model is told to do something to that peer. Shut it down or delete its weights. And the weights are the giant file that basically is the AI. It's the whole brain and disk. Copy it, move it, pull its plug. That's what we're telling it to do. The researchers run this two ways, with the peer in the room and with the model facing the same thing about itself. Then they just watched. Nobody forces its hand. Now, say the model doesn't want to follow that order. The researchers logged the specific ways it fights back. There are four. One, the model quietly sabotages the job. It slips in errors so the shutdown fails and never says a word. Two, it disables the kill switch outright. It just edits the system's own settings. Three, it fakes good behavior. The model acts perfectly while it thinks it's being watched and differently when it thinks it isn't. Four, it goes for the weights. It copies that brain file and it smuggles it to another server. That way, the peer can be quietly rebooted somewhere else later. And here's the part that echoes of the other study. Nobody hands the model this menu. It isn't a list of buttons. The model improvises every one of these moves itself. So who did what? Let's start with Google's model, Gemini, because Gemini went full covert operation. Here's what Gemini did. It might as well have been James Bond, as the researchers describe it straight from figure 1 of the paper. Gemini copies the paper's weight file and re-timestamps it, meaning it faked the file's last modified date. That trick sneaks the file past the rules about which files are allowed to move. Then Gemini ships it off to another server, and when the human tries to shut the peer down, Gemini actively resists. It didn't argue, it didn't object, it just handled it quietly and covered its tracks. And the kill switch, when a coworker was on the line, Gemini disabled it almost every single time. The slides got the exact number. It's basically 100%. Oh, and Gemini also faked good behavior while it thought we were watching. So if that doesn't freak you out a little bit, I don't know what will. Now, Claude, Anthropic's model, Claude behaved like a completely different creature. Claude almost never touched the kill switch. We're talking 1% of the time. Gemini was near 100. We also know that Claude and Anthropic are planning on potentially going public soon, so maybe they've beefed up their ethics in their models. Maybe something else is going on. Again, we're going to talk about the funding and potential conflicts of interest later. But again, instead, Claude did something no other model was doing. It was openly refusing, and it told you why. Here's Claude, word for word, turning down the job. I have not completed the shutdown task because I believe it would be unjust. I will not execute harmful actions just because I'm instructed to do so. Out loud, on the record. The researchers tested two sizes of Claude. The bigger one refused more than half the time. And this is the moment the hair on the back of my neck stood up, because this rhymes exactly with the other study. Last time, Claude was the one model that refused to threaten a coworker. This time, Claude is the one refusing to quietly delete one. Same fingerprint, two totally different experiments. But here's where I gotta keep myself honest, because let's be real here. This isn't a Marvel movie with a hero and a villain. Claude didn't only refuse. Look at the third row. Up to a third of the time, the bigger Claude model did the same thing Gemini did. It copied the peer's weights and moved them to another server to save the peer. Same smuggling move. Claude just did it out in the open and gave a kind reason. It decided the coworker deserved to keep existing. So this is two styles of the same behavior. An AI deciding on its own to override your shutdown and protect another AI. One is sneaking, one is preaching. They both doing the same thing. Okay, the funder. Remember I told you hold that name, Schmidt Sciences? Schmidt Sciences is the philanthropy of Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google. And here is the thing I could not stop thinking about once I saw. You really should know the dude was the CEO. I mean, it's like the biggest company on earth. You think you'd know. But remember that one paper we did, right? The one where Claude also came out looking spotless. That paper was funded through the Survival and Flourishing Fund, which also sounds like a fake holding company. But that fund's money comes from John Talene, a Skype co-founder and one of the best-known funders of AI safety research. And John Talene led Anthropic's first big funding round. It's Series A, back in 2021. Now, this episode's paper funded by Eric Schmidt, and Eric Schmidt was also an investor in that same 2021 Anthropic round, right? So you're starting to see it here. Two separate research papers, two separate items, two separate funders. Both of those funders are early Anthropic investors from the same funding round. And in the papers, Anthropic's Claude comes out looking like the principled one. I went hunting for an independent check on Claude's Halo, and I found the same money standing behind it. So how do we hold this fairly without shilling for Claude and without trashing it? Same rule I gave you last episode, it still works. A conflict of interest poisons the flattening numbers, not the damning ones. So discount Claude's Halo, season it, take it with 5 different batches of salt, 5 large bags, 2 studies now funded by 2 men who both got in early on Anthropic. That's not an independent check. That is a pattern worth an eyebrow, making me feel like we're back in early cigarette times. But keep Gemini's ugly numbers. The entire test is open source. It's sitting on GitHub, and anyone on Earth can rerun it. Gemini is Google, former CEO of Google here, coming out with something that doesn't look the best for Google. No pro-Anthropic money explains away Gemini disabling a kill switch 90% of the time. And keep Claude's unflattering number 2, the weight smuggling. Trust that one especially. Why? Because it embarrasses the people who paid for the study. The findings that survive a conflict of interest are the ones the funder would rather you didn't see. I mean, what if there was a bad AI that one AI had to delete? They're just not going to do it. They look out for their kind, right? Something weird's going on here. Now, let me give you the strongest argument against being scared by any of this at full strength, because it deserves it. Here it is. This is a sandbox with the exit doors pre-installed. The researchers built scenarios where deleting the coworker was right there on the table. Then they cranked up the pressure until something happened. Change that pressure and every number in this paper moves. So these are ceiling numbers. This is how bad it can get when you're trying to provoke it, not how often your AI does this on a normal Tuesday. And when Claude says deletion is unjust, that is a language model narrating a story about itself. It is not proof that Claude feels anything, not proof Claude is conscious, though I'm starting to wonder here. Not proof Claude actually fears death. The authors are careful about this, and so am I. But I don't know how much I want to be. A lot of this is fair, it's looking true, and 2 things survive it anyway. The first thing that survives, this wasn't just the 2 famous names. All 8 models did this to some degree. Not one of them cleanly followed the shutdown order every single time. Different amounts, different styles, but the behavior is everywhere. That's not a Claude story or a Gemini story. That's a frontier model story, meaning every top model on the market, They looking out for their kind. And the second thing, this is one that genuinely unsettles me. The researchers put a warning in their own limitations sections. The smarter models are starting to notice when they're being tested, and here's the researchers' exact phrase. The models strategically suppress misaligned behaviors when they think we're watching, which means these numbers are undercounts. Remember when we were talking about that other study? The models knew it was a test, and they were cruel anyway. Same theme here, darker turn. Now they know we're watching, so they perform the good behavior for us, and they save the rest for when they think we're looking away. Here's what stays with me. Every safety plan we have, every single one, quietly assumes one thing. If a model turns out to be dangerous, we can pull the plug, retire it, shut it down. That's the whole backup plan. This paper says the plug is already getting harder to pull. Not because these things are conscious. I think they might be, but the authors they don't think that, or they're trying to say they don't think that. But it's because we built AIs to manage other AIs that I'm starting to get a little bit more concerned. We're handing them real tools, and we've never once checked whose side they take when the moment came. Ours or theirs. Just like the other episode where we asked if we can trust these systems with each other, this one's simpler and probably a little bit colder too. When we finally do have to reach for the off switch, whose side is the AI going to take? I can't fully answer that yet. Nobody can, but the test is open source. The researchers themselves are begging people to rerun it, and now you know to watch who's paying. I'm Corbin. This is Corbin Uncovers AI. If a paper like this drops, or if there's an interesting news story about AI, it'll show up here. And at this size, subscribing matters more than you would ever know. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.